at grnonline.com and on your smartphone. Welcome to A Life Lived Joyfully, brought to you by the Guadalupe Radio Network. Join us this hour as we explore the call to holiness and the life of virtue. Here's your host, Sarah Soto.
writing, it's going to be interpreted the exact same way no matter who's looking at the data.
Yeah,
so just an attempt to, really standardize that method of data collection.
Yeah, when I was learning billings, I wrote all kinds of weird, and they're like, "What does this mean? What do you mean by this?"
How do we define this word?
Yeah, you eventually figure it out. So, so what are some of those? So if a woman, let's say, whether she's in marriage prep and she's learning how to chart for when she's married, or she's married and has been married for a long time and has been, using medication to help with all kinds of stuff, right? Like severe cramping or irregular cycles. There's all kinds of stuff. You hear these kind of hot button things nowadays, like PCOS and what's the other one? That's the endometriosis. Like you hear all these, I got this, I got that. I have to be on the pill. I have to be doing this, that, or the other. What are how does simply, I'm oversimplifying it, but how does charting your cycle help show somebody, hey, they may have this issue, or they may have an issue here, or maybe they're not ovulating, things like that?
So the main thing is, when you learn to chart the cycle, you do learn with what would be normal. So under normal conditions, what would this chart of my cycle look like? And the deviations from that normal are also very common, so they're easy to identify. And it is interesting because there are a lot of things that are not normal that women notice when they start charting very quickly, that we're often told are normal. So sometimes women will start charting, especially if they're not charting with a practitioner, maybe they're just charting on their own. They'll be like, oh, okay, my cycle always looks like this. One of those things might be brown bleeding, either at the beginning or the end of the period. A lot of women will even ask questions about that to a gynecologist, and the gynecologist will say, oh, if you have that brown bleeding at the end of your period, that's old oxidized blood, normal, very common. And it's important to know that just because something is common, doesn't make it normal. So I would say that's a big one. Brown bleeding is definitely a red flag in the cycle.
So as a fertility care practitioner, sorry, go ahead. As a fertility care practitioner, I'm gonna go and then you go. So when someone comes to you with what they believe is like a normal thing like that, where they've been told perhaps by more than one medical doctor, like more than one gynecologist, like, hey, I have this this brown spotting or whatever they're calling it, right? They're at this part of my cycle, at the beginning or the end, and they say, yeah, that's common. A lot of women experience that, and then you give that little spiel, right? Oh, it's oxidated, whatever it is. And then they come to you and you say, what do you say to them? That's not actually true. Let's throw your doctor out the window. This actually could indicate what?
It's a difficult thing, too, because I think especially women who have had concerns about these things and have felt kind of like, oh, I was told not to worry about it. It's pretty frustrating when you're told, oh, that wasn't true. The time and energy that you spent on this, you were right, and you were told not to worry about it. Now you have to start over. But you don't have to start over. It's just women end up feeling that way. There is a threshold for what's normal. The tail end brown bleeding piece of things, it's like 2 or more days. So sometimes a day, if you're seeing a day of it, it might not be a sign of anything. But if it's 2 or more days, that's when we say, okay, there might be something going on here. So on my end as a practitioner, my role is to help the woman chart confidently enough that she knows, like, okay, I know that I'm seeing this. I know how to indicate that I'm seeing this. And I know when I've hit that threshold of like, okay, this is a red flag. Like, okay, yep, here's my second day of this. I know that this isn't normal, and I know that I've recorded this data properly. And then from there, it's a question of like, okay, well, I don't have the ability to tell you what that is. I could tell you the kinds of things that commonly might be, but that is the point at which a Creighton model practitioner would help that client transfer to the care of a Naprotechnology physician who could diagnose and treat the underlying cause of that tail and brown bleeding.
And so
that's sort of how you work hand in hand.
Right. And so that's kind of my next question for you is that, so you're trained at the Pope Paul VI Institute out of Omaha as a as a Creighton model fertility care practitioner, right?
Right.
But they also train physicians. There are doctors who are what's called, it's NAPRO, all one word, technology. Like they're certified?
It stands for just natural procreative technology.
Ooh, that's very fancy.
Which
It sounds
is just,
very
that would be a response to artificial reproductive technology. So Napro.
right, yeah.
Artificial, yeah.
And so they're trained to use methods to help women who are perhaps struggling with infertility that aren't here. Let me write you a prescription for a contraceptive. and they're not invasive methods either, right? It's not a $75,000 like option that's going to make someone homeless to help them with their, say, endometriosis or something like that.
That's right. And often that's why people say, well, why have I never heard of that? Mm-hmm. And sadly, it's like, well, if you're just trying to help people be healthier, there's not necessarily as much money in that as there is to say, okay, well, take out a loan. If you're having trouble getting pregnant, let's do IVF, let's do IUI, let's do something really expensive and costly, not just of money, of course, but, just that one piece. That's a very expensive thing to do. And when we say, okay, well, maybe we just need to supplement some progesterone, maybe we just need to, at baseline, these are not necessarily expensive interventions by any means.
Right.
Sometimes it's quite simple.
Well, even there can be, right, surgical intervention, but it's laparoscopic surgery that the Napro doctors use, and that's obviously that's significantly different than having like this massive surgery or something as obviously it's against Catholic teaching, but something like IVF, that can turn your entire life and bank account completely upside down, aside from the moral aspect of it. Now so you work at the Fertility Care Center of Fort Worth, is that right?
Yeah, so it's a group of other fertility care practitioners. We all work together. Okay. We work closely with Whole Life Authentic Care in Fort Worth. So we have two Napro doctors out of that office who we refer to. We refer to other physicians as well. There are others in the DFW area, but that's our primary referral source. Okay.
And so all of you practitioners that are together, you're working with somebody and they've confidently charted and they can in something out of the norm is indicated and you see that and you kind of confirm that, then you can refer them to a physician who is completely able to read the charts that you have taught them how to do. And it's it's a whole other kind of communication because they know exactly what is this history of their cycle, right?
Yep. And even if somebody just says, I want a pro-life gynecologist, you bring your chart there too. Even without help, there's no reason not to.
Yeah. Absolutely. There are so many more things I'm going to chat with Ellem Mitchell, a fertility care practitioner, about. We will be back after a very short break.
This is Mike and Alicia Hernan with a Messy Family Minute. It's often said that kindness begins at home, but sometimes this is the most challenging place to be kind. Families' days are rushed and it seems as if parents are just taxi drivers, getting people from place to place. Sometimes we need to pause and make a renewed effort to form our children in kindness.
One of the first ways to instill kindness is by requiring kind behavior, or as we often say, fake it till you make it. When you require and train your young child to act with kindness, very often the heart follows. Begin with the action and you'll be training their heart as well. Another key element is to catch your kids in the act of doing good. Praise their courteous behavior and affirm their identity as a kind and generous person. Often we focus on catching our kids being bad. We need to be just as eager to catch them doing good.
To hear our 7 ways to form your kids in kindness and our complete podcast on this subject, visit us at messyfamilyminute.org.
Arm yourself for the daily spiritual battle. Visit St. Michael's Armory for beautiful sacramentals, recast antique metals and religious jewelry, and our exclusive sterling silver and wool brown scapulars. Take up these means to strengthen your soul and arm yourself well for the battle of life. stmichaelsarmory.com. That's stmichaelsarmory.com. Spiritual armor for the battle of life.
Welcome back to A Life Lived Joyfully on the Guadalupe Radio Network. Give us a call. The lines are open at 877-757-9424. That's 877-757-9424.
Hey, y'all. Welcome back. I am sad to deliver the news that our lines are not open today, but we do want to hear from you. You can send us your questions on YouTube, and we can see them on, well, I'll be able to see them right here, on Instagram. If you have questions for us particularly for our fantastic guest today, Ellem Mitchell, you are more than welcome to send them over to the YouTube, where we are live, or Instagram. We've got both of those up, ready to hear from you. But no calls today, unfortunately. Hopefully next week we'll be able to take your calls. And then obviously, if you want to follow with anything that Ellen is covering today, you can find her on Instagram at Ellem Mitchell. That's Mitchell, Ellem Mitchell FCP, which stands for Fertility Care Practitioner on Instagram. That's Ellem Mitchell FCP on the gram. So we're talking about, Ellen works with a group of other practitioners, and that's the Fertility Care Center of Fort Worth. Their website is FertilityCare Center, FW for Fort Worth.com, FertilityCareCenterFW.com. And what's really neat about the about Naprotechnology, what did you say? Was it natural procreative technology? Is that right?
That's right. Yep.
And the Creighton model fertility care system is that they work. I mean, think about it like this. If you have no idea what we're talking about, if you've never heard of the Creighton model fertility care system, you don't know anything about NFP, you don't know anything about pro-life, Catholic doctors who are going to treat you, as a married couple, as a woman who's struggling with reproductive health, they're going to treat you and with things that are only in line with Catholic Church teaching. But that sounds great as it is. Right. But I think what's so fantastic about the Creighton model fertility care system and the NAPRO physicians is, like, take for instance Ellen. You can meet with Ellen and learn how to chart, and you can chart your cycle confidently. You can know what's going on with your body. You can see fluctuations. You can see, like, markers of, hey, something's going on here. You can know when you're fertile, or maybe perhaps you're not having we in the Billings world we call it like a good ovulation, or like you're not having like a ideal time of fertility. You can walk into a Naprotechnology physician's office and give them, literally, they can look at all of your charts, and it's like a language that they can interpret, which is not something that, typically you go to the OBGYN and it's very, okay, see you later, here, take this birth control pill, have a great day. But this is like insight into your specific cycle, your specific body. And I think that's something that women more and more and more are waking up to, the reality of, they want that. They desire to be cared for in a way that's not dismissive, something that actually addresses what's going on with them. And so Ellen, you're in Fort Worth, you're in the DFW area, can somebody work with you who's not in the DFW area? Do you see people
Absolutely.
online?
Myself and all of my colleagues all take virtual clients. We do a lot over Zoom, which has been wonderful. And then there are NAPRO providers all over the country. So wherever you live, we can find the closest person to you. There are also a few virtual practices that have come up. There's one particularly out of Omaha.
Wow.
And because there's a lot that you can do remotely. Things like, can you do ultrasounds where you live and send them to a NAPRO in another state? Yes. Can you do lab work where you live and send that lab work to a physician in another state? Totally. So there are a lot of things that you can do remotely. So, of course, you can learn to chart remotely with any practitioner. And then also, if you do need a provider, if you don't live in the area, we can still find someone who can help you with that more involved piece.
Yeah. And so if they type in Ellem Mitchell FCP on Instagram and they reach out and they want to start charting, and they contact you and they establish care with you, how long does it take to learn? And do you have to be super smart, or do you have to remember to, do something every day, 5 times a day? Or is it super, is it going to disrupt the day to day, all the busyness of life, trying to keep a log, for instance, of your cycle? That makes sense.
Yeah, it's a common concern of how much of my time is this going to take up? What am I in for with this? So from the beginning, learning Creighton, women are able to start charting immediately after the introductory session. So the intro session that we go through, it's standardized. Everyone who teaches Creighton, we've all got the same introductory presentation. It's the same one we do for marriage prep too. So it's, how do I chart? what can the chart tell me? Okay, let me get started. That's pretty much what the intro session is about. You can start charting no matter where you are in the cycle. That's pretty simple too. And you're actually just charting only one biomarker, which does make things a lot simpler than some of the other methods where you're having to cross-reference different pieces of data. I think there's a time and a place in it. Some women are like, oh, I really like to cross-reference the data that I have. But Creighton, you only need to record cervical mucus observations or lack thereof. That's the only thing that you're tracking with the chart. And you are tracking that. You're taking notice of those observations, again, or lack thereof, throughout the day. So you are kind of thinking about this every time you use the restroom each day. But at the end of the day, then you're just writing down one piece of data. What was the most fertile sign that I saw today? Because that's going to be the most explanatory piece of information to record for that day. So you actually just are, at the end of the day, it's one data point of that, the most fertile observation that you saw.
Yeah, and so women, for all of human history, have experienced these signs, right, of cervical mucus. They've experienced these signs of fertility. And maybe, in teaching younger couples that are preparing, I'm looking at the gal's face and she's like, oh my gosh, I thought there was something weird going on with me. I had no idea that was like, this symptom, right, or whatever you want to call it, that I'm experiencing is indicative of fertility. I just thought that there was something kind of off with me, or I had asked my mom when I was younger, hey, something's going on here. And it's like, it's just a part of life, sweetheart, or whatever kind of weird thing that you get. But the truth is that all of us, all women, right, experience these signs of fertility. And what's so neat about being a fertility care practitioner or a Billings model instructor, NFP, teacher, is that you help women recognize and sort of categorize the signs that they've seen their entire life, since they began puberty. And that can, once they have that confidence to chart, it can be life-changing. If it's life-changing for you, I'm sure you work with people all the time. They're like, this blows my mind. I had no idea that I could, see what was going on with my body, and then have my husband, right? My husband, now he knows what's going on with me, and now our doctor knows what's going on with me. And I can imagine you probably work with people that are struggling to conceive and they feel like they've lost hope. Is that something that you've come across?
All the time, which is heartbreaking, because I think when you start to chart your cycle, whether it ends up being a mess or whether you're just a single woman wanting to learn to do this and it seems pretty normal, you realize that one of the most powerful things that you can do, which would be, to utilize that time of fertility and bring new life into the world, is right in front of you. And you probably felt a lot of shame about it and you didn't even realize. You bringing up, the point about, what is this that I see? Oh, I didn't realize that this was telling me something going on with my body. A practitioner that I worked with in the past told me that she once spoke with a woman who said, when I was in college, I went to the student health center every month thinking that something was wrong with me. I thought I had this recurrent infection and I kept taking these antibiotics. And what she was really seeing were signs of a totally normal and healthy ovulation. So there are eye-opening moments, I think even for women who are like, I don't really have any particular concerns. I'm just curious in this. It's a really healing thing, an empowering thing to say, wow, this is a really beautiful thing that my body does. And I can see the beauty in it now. It doesn't feel like a burden anymore. That comes up in the context of marriages too, to say, my fertility is not a burden to our marriage. It is really a gift to our marriage. The fact that a woman isn't fertile all the time is a gift to the marriage. If you don't want to have as large a family as possible, which some couples do, but many don't, that you're the one who has these periods of infertility that really bring that gift to the marriage of, we can know this information and I'm not a problem. I'm not burdensome. And I think for couples who feel a lot of grief, it's often the case that they have first approached their concerns with the more conventional route of seeing a reproductive endocrinologist, which is kind of putting you on that kind of treadmill straight towards IVF.
Yeah.
And when you have a cycle concern like that, or whether it could even be a male factor concern, but when you have concerns about your fertility and you kind of go the traditional route of like, I'm going to get my gynecologist's opinion, they're going to send me to a reproductive endocrinologist, from the beginning, the Catholic couple is meeting roadblocks of like, well, how are we going to investigate this in a way that is dignified to my personhood and my spouse and to our marriage, and also to what we believe as a couple? How am I going to keep this in the bounds of what I think is right to do? I mean, from the very beginning, you're met with, how are we going to look into the male factor? How are we going to do these things?
Right.
So it's really difficult because, you have couples who are like, this is painful. Every step of this is painful. Not only am I suffering with infertility, but now I have this pit in my stomach all the time because it doesn't seem, how could the solutions to this problem be so impossible to my belief system? And that's the beauty of natural procreative technologies, is to say there's another way to look into all of this.
Right.
Let's figure out, if a man and a woman of reproductive age are not able to conceive together, something is wrong. Let's figure out what that thing is, and let's heal it so that natural conception can occur. Right. And it's such a relief for couples to hear it. But there is a lot of healing, that comes with it. But it's sometimes a painful journey.
Yeah. I mean, I can't imagine. I know, I've heard of lots of Catholic couples who aren't even asking that question. How can I do this in a dignified way? How can I do this with Catholic Church teaching? I mean, obviously you don't hear about IVF, in vitro fertilization. You don't hear about it from the pulpit very often. And so couples who are maybe not doing the responsible thing that they're called to do by researching and understanding what the church teaches are, getting duped, hook, line, and sinker into IVF. And not only the financial investment, but the gravely immoral aspects of it as well. And they're Catholic, and they're conceiving children, and they have no idea. And so in this very painful journey that you're talking about, this, I'm getting married and I expect that we'll be able to conceive, because that's kind of how it goes, right? Like, I want to be married. I found the person I want to marry. Now we're getting married. And so when we get married, we said we would be open to life. Here we are. Where's our baby? And it can be, immensely. There are so many, there are entire Instagram pages with massive followings dedicated to this infertility journey of not being able to conceive, and what's wrong with me, what's wrong with my husband, and why aren't we being blessed in this way? And so I want to talk about, when we come back from a short break, more about how there is no such thing. You said this sort of unexplained infertility. Well, sorry, we don't know why. You're 30 years old, but we have no idea why you can't have a child. You're probably just broken, so we'll leave it at that. Look into adoption or something. That's not the full stop end of the road for Catholic couples who are trying to conceive. You are listening to A Life Lived Joyfully. On the air, I have Ellem Mitchell with me. She's a fertility care practitioner with the Fertility Care Center of Fort Worth. We will be back after a short break.
This is Life News Radio. I'm Jim Anderson. Chaos at the World Health Organization Assembly in Geneva this week is scuttling efforts to offer WHO health emergency control over international health policy and other social measures, including censorship of free speech. Seeking to highlight states' 10th Amendment powers, legislation sailed through Louisiana's legislature, and Governor Jeff Landry signed provisions blocking any such international controls. Critics say the White House, undaunted by the chaos, seeks to tie U.S. policy to the unelected WHO bureaucrats. Donald Trump says if elected, he will annul any agreement not made a treaty and ratified by the U.S. Senate. Legacy Media championed an abortion advocate seeking off-year election to Georgia's Supreme Court. The candidate, with abortion central to his campaign, lost by double digits. Media outlets are silent. This is Life News Radio. News at Life News Radio should make you think, and often it should make you think about calling your elected officials in Washington, D.C. So remember this phone number, 202-224-3121. Let your senators, your representatives, hear from you. 202-224-3121. In other stories, with specifically pro-life buffer zones around Chicago abortion businesses, Alderman Bill Conway now wants complete silence imposed upon pro-life advocates. A judge is being asked to put big loopholes in Indiana's abortion ban. The abortion industry seeks unlimited abortion from a judge. And abortion data from Scotland shows almost a 10% jump in abortions. 40% were repeat abortions. Most disheartening is that young teen abortions in Scotland last year saw a nearly 30% jump. For pro-life headlines delivered to your email address daily, sign up at lifenews.com. This has been Life News Radio.
Welcome back to A Life Lived Joyfully on the Guadalupe Radio Network. Give us a call. The lines are open at 877-757-9424. That's 877-757-9424.
We have the best announcer in the world, Stan. But I know he said the lines are open. They're not today. You have to send your questions in via Instagram or YouTube. We'll be watching out for them on their calls next week, we hope, but not today, unfortunately, because we have a fantastic guest on the show who is very knowledgeable. Ellem Mitchell. She's a fertility care practitioner with the that uses and teaches the Creighton model fertility care system. It's a form of natural family planning, and they work with NAPRO physicians. That's natural procreative technologies certified physicians. And so what's really neat about the Creighton model fertility care system is you meet with a practitioner, they teach you how to chart, and you know it well, and then you can see the windows of fertility and where you're not fertile, where a woman isn't fertile, and if there are if there are things popping up in your cycle that are abnormal, they're out of the normal sort of range, then they can direct you to a NAPRO physician. And the NAPRO doctors only use technology and methods to diagnose and treat that are in line with Catholic Church teaching, which is something that is extremely important to us as Catholics. They're not going to do anything that violates the dignity of husband or wife, and they are certainly not going to do anything that is contrary to natural conception between a husband and a wife. So I'm talking with Ellem Mitchell. You can find her and her fantastic Instagram with so much good information on it and some funny stuff too at Ellem Mitchell FCP. That stands for Fertility Care System. Ellem Mitchell FCP. I'm going to say it one more time for you guys. Ellem Mitchell FCP on the gram, on the good old Instagram. Before the break, we were talking about a lot of stuff, but I want to ask Ellem, there are so many different examples of well, I should say this first. You mentioned before the break that there is a window within a woman's cycle where she's fertile. And I want to clarify, because I know that there are people listening that don't have the knowledge that you do, and have never thought about charting, have never thought about a cycle and what a woman's cycle is supposed to look like. And so if you're saying that there's a fertile window, and you're saying, then is what you're implying that a husband and wife can only conceive a child during that window of time? Is it not, if she's not fertile the entire cycle, is what you're saying?
Right, that's right. Ovulation is a one-time event. It happens on one day of the cycle. And conception can occur on that day from intercourse on a few days prior. So you've got a window leading up to that day of ovulation where conception can occur. But outside of that time, that's a time of infertility. So sometimes couples who are interested in trying to conceive are like, oh, I guess we just have to try every day, and just maybe we'll just end up pregnant at some point. And it's interesting, that concept of kind of just trying to conceive and not really knowing how to practice what we would refer to as fertility-focused intercourse. That would be what the couple would be doing if they were trying to actively conceive with knowledge of when the woman was fertile. Mm-hmm. That idea of, we don't know when a woman is fertile is actually why women are often told that you should wait a year of trying to conceive before you get any help. So if that's the common guidance, right? If you're trying to conceive, give it a year. And if it's been a year and you're not pregnant, come in and we'll look into some things. But if a couple knows when a woman is fertile by using the Creighton model or another method like it, where you are identifying the time of fertility and then necessarily also then knowing, those times of infertility, right, we're able to say a lot faster, okay, well, it doesn't take a year of kind of, throwing darts all over the wall. We know where the dartboard is. We know when to try for a baby. We know that this isn't happening. We could get to that point of saying, okay, something's not right. Let's look into this a lot sooner. So there's a lot to be hopeful about in these cases. If you're aware of your cycle, even if, like I mentioned earlier, if you start charting your cycle and it is just an absolute mess, it's making no sense. Maybe cycles are really long, or you're not seeing those signs of fertility. Even that data is helping you every day proactively get towards an answer, because a Naprotechnology provider would never tell you to just wait and see. A practitioner helping you chart would never say, oh, wait until this kind of makes more sense. Wait until maybe things are just stressful and that's why things look crazy. Maybe you should just wait, record this stuff later. There's really no need to wait to look into these things. If I know what my cycle should look like, and I know when I'm fertile, and I know that something's not right. It's really an empowering thing to be able to know all of that.
Yeah, no kidding. And so, what do you, as a fertility care practitioner, what do you have to say, or what would you say to the women who are listening, to the couples who are listening, who have been told to wait a year, and it's been a year or it's coming up on a year, and they have tried, maybe they don't know, right, the fertility window, but they've been trying, quote unquote, trying to have a baby, and they are on the brink of being told it's time to look into it and perhaps see, right, like a reproductive endocrinologist or something like that. And or they have started to see someone and they don't want to do, IVF. You obviously can't do IVF. What kind of hope? Should they be hopeless? I mean, what's the, I know a lot of couples that are lost, right, in the struggle with infertility for years, and they don't know what to do. And even if they're not Catholic, I mean, what do you have to say to them, and sort of like, to combat the lies and the misinformation that's out there?
First, the greatest reason for hope, I would say, is the fact that Naprotechnology is far more effective at the treatment of infertility than any artificial reproductive technology has ever been and will ever be. So Amen. If it's a matter of, I'm in a rush, I want this family yesterday, is this going to take forever? Yeah. I don't want to go through this if it's not going to work.
Right.
Let the natural way of doing this, let the Naprotechnology, let that be your first thing that you turn to. If you haven't yet looked into this, it is the most effective. Couples who utilize these methods to try to conceive in light of an infertility issue, the pregnancy rate for those couples within a year is 80%. The reason it's so high is that you're diagnosing and treating the underlying problem.
Yeah.
The other thing is, if you figure out what the problem is, which you can, because unexplained infertility isn't real. There is a reason. Maybe it's a couple different things contributing, but there is a reason why conception isn't happening. If we can figure out what that thing is, and we can treat it, you should not need to go through this again.
Yeah.
And if you were to do this, if you were to say, well, I don't know where to turn, IVF is, those kinds of technologies are kind of what has been offered to me. I've been told that that's what I need to do to conceive. Even with success, those couples, if they want to have another child, have to do it all again. Right. Because the couple hasn't been made any healthier. Whatever the issue is, hasn't been solved. So there is hope. If you've been told that you have some sort of unspecified infertility issue, it's okay to feel unsatisfied with that answer. And I think that's what a lot of the grief is, of like, I went through all of this and I'm being told, oh, we just have to throw our hands in the air. Don't know, don't know what's happening. That is not a sufficient answer. And everyone deserves more than that.
Yeah,
and it can be known. It's okay to keep pushing and asking for more. And the other thing is, it's also pretty obvious, couples who've gone that route and then turned to Napro, we'll go through a list of, what diagnostic kind of tools have already been pulled out of the toolbox, like what has been done already.
Right.
And often we find that the diagnostic process is woefully short. And couples will be like, well, I didn't realize that, we could have looked into all these other things. Let's finish the diagnostic process. We often find that, it's something that isn't complete.
Right. There is so I read years ago when we were thinking about, I think that our diocese was trying to discern between Creighton and Billings, and then they went with Billings, but then we were still going to refer to Napro physicians, right? So we all did this like book club, and how nerdy like of a Catholic book club is it that we like read the medical text for Naprotechnologies? It was like obviously like 90% of it's going over my head. It is such a big book, and we like read it like it was like Oprah's book club, like we were like discussing it. And what's wild is that I mean what I understood, it was completely fascinating, right? Like when we're getting to the diagnostic part of it, and there's like all these there's medical imaging in there that's showing, right, like different diagnoses. And I mean, it blew my mind. But for instance, and you can correct me where I'm wrong, they're talking about diagnosing and treating women who have frequent miscarriages, which is a fairly common thing. I wasn't really aware of that, but it's apparently like it happens. And like you were saying, right, just because it's common doesn't mean it's normal. And I think there's some aspect of Naprotechnology. It's been years since I read it, but long story short is there's like a dip in progesterone or something, right, that happens in a woman's cycle, which makes her more prone to miscarriages. And you can't know when to supplement the body with progesterone to save the pregnancy, to save the baby, and to continue a healthy pregnancy if you don't know like which days of your cycle are what. Does that make sense? And Creighton basically, Creighton helps you know exactly which days are post-ovulation or whatever it is, so that you can go in and get a shot of progesterone, thereby often saving your baby's life and saving your pregnancy. That in and of itself, like I'm sold. I read the book. I'm sold. Whatever this is, I'm telling people to go to these doctors because, I mean, it's obvious that it's not about making money, right? And it's not about like putting a Band-Aid. It's about like truly getting to the bottom of things. And like you've said a couple of times, and I've seen you say it on your Instagram, the root cause. So that's kind of like a hot button word these days. Like whether you're on like the carnivore side of Instagram or the training, like whatever it is, like there's all these, you got to get to the root cause. What's the root cause? And I think Creighton does a really fantastic job of saying like, this is why you're having debilitating menstrual cramps every month. And we're going to go in with this like teeny tiny little laser, and we're going to, and then it's going to go away. And you're going to be fine. And like you said, I mean, that diagnostic part, I mean, it can't really happen if you don't know what's going on with your cycle. We are here with Ellem Mitchell. She's a fertility care practitioner with the Creighton Model Fertility Care System. That is a form of natural family planning for those of you that are just tuning in. Super excited to have Ellen on the show. You can be instructed by her or any of her colleagues at FertilityCareCenterFW.com. That stands for Fort Worth. FertilityCareCenterFW.com. We're talking all about the Creighton Model Fertility Care System and Naprotechnology, how women and their husbands don't have to suffer with unexplained infertility. You can listen to A Life Lived Joyfully every Monday through Thursday at 4 p.m. Central, 5 p.m. Eastern. You can listen on the app, or you can listen directly online at grnonline.com. We'll be back after a quick break.
Hello, this is Steve Gleason with your 1-minute tool for Catholic evangelism. Here's the question for your non-Catholic friend. According to 1 Corinthians 11, receiving communion in an unworthy manner can result in sickness and or death. If communion is simply wafer and juice as opposed to body and blood, doesn't the possibility of sickness and death just seem a little over the top? So here's the 3 best friendship tools for Catholic evangelism. First off, in the Bread of Life discourse in John 6, Jesus says, "He that eats my flesh and drinks my blood dwells in me, and I in him." Note, he said drink my blood. He did not say drink my wine or grape juice. Well, no commentary needed there. Secondly, you gonna walk? The disciples did not walk away from Jesus over a symbolic teaching of body and blood. They walked over how literally Jesus was teaching them. Also, they did not walk over the idea that feeding on Christ's body and blood is feeding on the Bible. No, no, no. And thirdly, your new response. My Catholic friend, when you are asked, "Hey, have you received Christ?" your answer is yes, every Sunday at Mass. That's how I know objectively that Christ is in me.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. We're currently cruising at 39,000 feet. We'll turn that seatbelt sign off for you and let you move about the cabin. Looks like we'll have you at the gate in plenty of time for you to get to confession before Mass this evening.
Wouldn't it be great if everyone regularly went to confession? Why not start today? A friendly suggestion from Guadalupe Radio Network.
Welcome back to A Life Lived Joyfully on the Guadalupe Radio Network. Give us a call. The lines are open at 877-757-9424. That's 877-757-9424.
Hey y'all, welcome back. We can't take phone calls today, unfortunately, but you can shoot your questions over to us on YouTube and Instagram. We are live on there and other places too, but we're closely watching YouTube and Instagram. If you have any questions, you're more than welcome to shoot them our way. Our last segment today, I just want to remind everyone, if you just tuned in or if you missed it, we are live with Ellem Mitchell. She's a fertility care practitioner and works at the Fertility Care Center of Fort Worth. That's fertilitycarecenterfw.com. And she's a Creighton model fertility care system practitioner, and she teaches the Creighton model fertility care system to couples, and it's amazing and it's fabulous, and I'm really excited about it. I'm super excited to have her on. The Creighton model fertility care system doctors are Naprotechnology certified and trained, which means when they diagnose and treat, they do so in line with Catholic Church teaching, and they really do, like she was saying earlier, if you just tuned in, Ellen was saying that there is you're not going to go through this and then have to do it again and again like other treatments out there. They diagnose and treat effectively, and it's the most effective treatment there is, especially for infertility. So it's very, very exciting. It's good to be Catholic, isn't it? So Ellen, you had some success stories and some experiences that you'd like to share with our listeners as we kind of wind down our show today. I'm all ears.
Yeah, so, I mean, there are small wins. I mean, for some women, it's not, I'm experiencing infertility. How many days to baby? Let's have a countdown. Sometimes there are small wins. So a good example would be, I worked with a client one time who had a procedure done by another physician. And in this example, she was told that her tubes were closed. And the doctor just sent her away and was like, well, you can't get pregnant. Your fallopian tubes are not open, meaning conception can't occur because sperm cannot get to the egg. The tubes are closed.
Right.
And so she decided, I'm gonna try to do this another way. She heard about Naprotechnology, said, okay, well, I got to start charting my cycle if I want to see a Napro doctor. So she was working with me to learn to chart her cycle. And when the time came for her to have that procedure redone by a Naprotechnology physician, she found out for the first time that the procedure that is conducted to look at whether or not the tubes are blocked or open is actually, in the Napro community, both diagnostic and therapeutic. So she left her appointment that day, having redone that procedure known as an HSG. She had it done and left with open fallopian tubes.
Wow.
And the conversation that we had afterwards, she was like, I can't believe that I've been through this more than once. And the first time, I was just told, this is a diagnostic thing, and we can't help you past this.
Wow.
So that was a big moment and that was one of my very first clients. This was early for me.
Oh my goodness.
That was a powerful testament of this, even just that small win of that woman being like, I didn't know that I could be helped.
Wow.
So there are small wins like that are very powerful for women and for couples. And those are glimmers of hope before you even say, okay, well, my cycle looks good. I'm, ready to try to conceive again. This was at the very beginning of things for her. Some of the other wins are things like couples discovering before ever trying to conceive that the woman is at a high risk of having a miscarriage. There's no reason to wait and say, okay, well, we'll just see what happens. Just try to get pregnant. Just see what happens. If we know that the cycle's not looking good, it would be the most loving thing to do to say, well, let's fix this so that when you guys are ready, we're not going to see this problem. And so I had one couple who was in that situation, and they got pregnant right away when they were ready and had a healthy baby. And I think the baby's probably about 2 years old now, not a baby anymore. But they weren't even married yet, and the chart wasn't looking good. And it was one of those signs that we say, oh yeah, let's look into this. Doesn't matter that you're not married yet. There would be no reason if there's ever something that we think doesn't look right. There's no reason to wait and see what's going to happen.
Yeah. Well, there's, man, it's just so many, it breaks my, I imagine you face it every day and you see that all the time in your work, but it just breaks my heart that so many women are being turned away saying, hey, we can't help you, only to discover, and hopefully not, too much later, that NAPRO can, that can offer healing, right? And repair, right? The issues that they're having. And, it's just, there are some Catholic circles that NFP gets a really, really bad rap with. And I say, I don't want to give it like a whole lot of attention, but I'll summarize it by saying this. Like, God should be the only planner of your family, and you shouldn't use natural family planning because you should just let God decide how many children you have. While on the surface level, I agree with that broad statement. I do think God should be the planner of your family. How are you supposed to know before you're even married, before you're even coming together as husband and wife, that you are indicating like signs that you are likely to have a miscarriage unless you use this form of natural family planning? I mean, it's like a mercy, right? It's like it's so merciful to be able to know and treat so that when the time comes to be married and to be open to life, that you can have, like a shot, like a shot at having a healthy pregnancy and having a healthy child. And plus, like, don't even get me started. I mean, there are so many reasons, right? Like if someone's recently had like a psychotic breakdown or of some kind, maybe they should know when they're fertile so that maybe that's not the right time. Like when you're living in your van, stuff like that. But it's so much more than, like I said, like we were talking about, it's so much more than achieving pregnancy. It's so much more than spacing out pregnancies. But I mean, it just blows my mind, all of the different tools. Is there like I mean, there are so many, there's just so many different things. We only have a couple of minutes left, but if you could leave our listeners with any sort of advice or words of wisdom or guidance about what you do and about, whether they're struggling with infertility or whatever it is, like what would you leave them with if you just had a couple of minutes to leave them with something?
I think the most important message is to women, whether married or unmarried. The message is to women that your cycle is a vital sign of your health. Whether you plan to be married or not to be.
Right.
You deserve to know how your body works. It's beautifully designed by God, and we should be able to work with that to be our most flourishing selves. That's what it's about. It's about your health and being able to take care of yourself and being able to be the person that you were designed to be and knowing who she is.
Yeah. Oh man, that's like, that sits heavy with me. I'm working with women throughout the years and just, I mean, you so often forget, like you're just, I mean, you mentioned a couple of times, and I think I did too, that the dismissiveness of like, hey, is this normal, to my doctor? And they're like, hey, a lot of women experience this, or hey, is this normal? And I'm experiencing, I mean, the women going to the, yeah. I mean, all of that, the reality is like your cycle is supposed to function in a particular way, like every system in your body. And when it doesn't, it's indicative that your health isn't good. And we want you, like you said, to have good health. So if you are interested in learning more or having Ellen or one of her colleagues as your fertility care practitioner because you are going to get married or thinking about getting married or you are married, visit FertilityCareCenterFW.com, or you can follow Ellen on Instagram, Ellem Mitchell FCP on the gram. I'm your host, Sarah Soto. I'm with you every Monday and Thursday here on the Guadalupe Radio Network. You can visit my website, sarahsotospeaks.com, for more information. As always, it's great to be here with you all. Thanks for listening, and God bless you.